Hi, this is Michael with Peace and Favor. Thank you for joining us for this new episode. This one's entitled Parenthood. And this is in response to the talk I did on fatherhood recently. And while doing it, I realized that it would be wise to talk a little bit more about parenthood in general. Parenthood is one of the most important roles that we play in life for those of us who have the opportunity to be parents. We're charged with preparing our children to be productive members of society, and that is a huge undertaking. Even though people have been parenting for thousands of years, we have yet to come up with a manual, which is kind of ridiculous. But there's a good reason for there not being a manual, and that is that every child is different. And so what's best for raising them is going to be unique. Also, every parent is different. Every mother is different, every father is different. We were raised in different ways. We bring different skill sets to, this role. And so it makes it hard to get a generic handbook for parenting. But I would think at least by now we would have a good book of guidelines to help us out. But today, I'm going to try to speak briefly on parenthood and just some things for you to consider before parenthood or as parents that might actually end up helping you just by alerting you to some of the blind spots that you may have, or giving you a different perspective that you hadn't considered. So let's go ahead and be about this. There are numerous ways to raise children, and what's best for you, that's for you to determine. But there are a few things I want you to think about. Your view of society greatly impacts how you're going to raise your child. And just to give you a couple examples, if you see society as a place to thrive, you're going to have a more optimistic perspective when it comes to raising your child. You'll have a sense of openness, a sense of possibilities, be more upbeat. As opposed to if you view society with fear and trepidation, where in that case, you will probably be more controlling or attempt to have more control over your children, be more protective. You will stress things like discipline and constraint because you need to protect your child from the dangers outside. And just that different in perspectives of being open and being fearful are huge. And that's something that comes from the parent. All right. And with many of the things I'll be sharing today, it'll be things that come from the parents. Now, I personally believe that the focus should be on the child. But first, you need to come to grips with what luggage you're bringing yourself. And your child may come as an almost blank slate, but they're going to be receiving what you give them, the way that you give them. And so I'm going to address the parents, for this one. I told you there are different ways to raise a child. And there are all kinds of spectrums I'm talking about. Some people see having a child as having a piece of property. Like, this is my child. And they're mine to teach and to train and as I see fit. No one else has a right to have any say in this. Even the child doesn't have a right to, in this. There's no like their independence or anything in that. It's like, no, I'm the parent, and I'll decide what information you receive and how you will conduct yourself, what is proper and improper behavior, what's the right perspective on things. I decide how you're going to be brought up. The other extreme, though, is this, where some people raise their children like they're little adults, all right, where they're going to raise them to be independent of constraints, of discipline. They feel like the child is an independent entity, and they will just innately figure out how to interact with the world around them. And again, this is an extreme, but there are people who raise their children on both of these extremes. And then, of course, hopefully the majority is somewhere in between, where you want to have your child safe. You want to provide for them the physical, emotional, psychological needs. All right. But you also want to give them some respect, some independence, because they are independent of you now. And this is the tricky part of being a parent. What you know about parenting is what you learn as a child, what you learn experiencing other people's parentings. And so the first example you go back to is how you were raised. And if you don't like the way you were raised, you're probably going to have a problem with the way you're going to raise your child. You're going to find yourself doing one of two things usually. You'll raise your child just like you were raised, because if it was good enough for you, it's good enough for them. Or you do the opposite, which is you're going to try to do everything your parents didn't. If your parents were harsh, you're going to be extremely lenient. Or if your parent was lenient, you're going to be more controlling. If your parents were cold and aloof, you're going to be very warm and nurturing. All right. Or vice versa. If you feel like your parents smothered you, you're going to give the child room. All right. And, but again, this is like trial and error, and because you don't know how much is too much. And sometimes you don't even know that you're doing it. And that's the scary part. I have talked to so many parents, but I will tell you this one thing that is common to all of them. They didn't figure out the best parenting skills until the kids had grown up. In other words, they look back and it's like, you know, what I should have done, how I should have handled. And it's like, to this day, my baby is beyond 30, okay? My kids are grown. But I still see things that stab me in the heart, because it's like that bias they have, that came from me. I put that there. And as parents, we impart our biases and prejudices onto our children. Not consciously most of the time, but it's like it comes through, because they're not just listening to what we say, they're looking at the way we behave. And every little twitch, eyebrow raised, anything is sending a message to the child. And so we as parents, our job is tough, extremely complicated. And that's why I say that it's one of the most important roles, because again, we're preparing these kids to join society, to be productive members. And if we don't do a good job, they won't be productive. They'll be non-productive. They'll be destructive to society. And as individuals, they will be extremely frustrated if they don't have the skills necessary to be successful. It's like you send your child to school, and yet they don't have the materials necessary to do the schoolwork. This has nothing to do with their level of intelligence or anything like that. If they don't have the materials, they're automatically behind. And it's going to be difficult for them to do what's necessary. I can remember when I was in high school, we would go to take tests, and our teacher would literally tell us, you need this kind of calculator in order to do these problems. And if you had a lower level or no calculator, you were screwed. Okay? It's like you could still do it, but it's going to take you much, much, much longer to do it. And you would waste time doing basic, equations when you just plug into your calculator, can knock it right out, and you can get on with getting your assignment done. If your child is not accustomed to obeying rules at home, they're not going to do it when they're gone. If your child is disrespectful at home, they're going to be disrespectful when they're gone. If your child is a bully at home, they're going to be a bully when they're gone. If you are a bully, your child's going to imitate that when they leave. If you are harsh, unfair, they're going to be like that. If you berate people, they're going to be like that. And so being a parent is hard because not only is it about what you're trying to teach them, it's also your role model. And that's a bear. All parents have to struggle with their own shortcomings and their personal demons. Not imparting that to our children. It is so hard. I trigger myself about things. And when my kids start to share something with me, I flash back to my childhood. And then I come back up to their childhood with what they're talking about. Because it's all connected. And so people should give a lot of thought before having a child. There are so many conversations that we should have before having a child. Because as a mother, a female, you are raised a certain way in a certain environment, and you learn how to be a female, a woman, a girl, a woman from your mother, and then from interactions with your parents, with the family. That was totally different than the person you got with, your husband or the father of this child, who was raised by different people in different circumstances, who had different lessons. And so their idea of what it takes to raise a child is different than what yours is. And if you're raised in different communities, you have different values, different standards. And so you're excited about the prospect of having a child, but have you had the conversations about how will you raise this child? What will be the values that you're trying to instill and model for them? What's going to be the standard, moral standards that you're going to use? All these things are tremendously important because any variance between the two of you, mom and dad, is just going to cause confusion with the child. So again, even though we're talking about the child, I'm talking about the parent, where we have so much work to do, so many discussions to have before we talk about having a child. And so if you're, a part of a couple and you guys are discussing having a child, and you need to talk about what your childhood was like and what parenting skills, like how were you raised? And so how do you see yourself as a father, as a mother? And have those conversations. And what do you want to impart to your child? And what do you want for your child? It's like, what's the key values that you want to give them? And what does it take for you to say, I'm proud of my child. I've done a good job with raising them. Those are kind of questions you want to have. Not just what school are you going to go to, even though that's important. Where you want to live, that's going to be a good neighborhood for your family. That is a lot to think about. And when I think about having to deal with my own demons, my own shortcomings, and deal with my kids, it's crazy. And when I say shortcomings, I don't mean just I was abused in some way or something like that, or I mean things like this. I have health issues, all right? And if I impregnate some woman, there's a good chance that I'm going to pass those traits on to the child. Need to be aware of that. The mother, same thing. Any health issues, that's a part of your DNA. you're going to be passing that on. And so literally, like, I know with black folk, like we have sickle cell, and it's actually, we need to talk to our doctors and have some tests done before we make a baby, because we don't want to both have the sickle cell trait end up really harming our child, all right, by them getting sickle cell anemia. But that's just an example of just physically what can happen. It could be everything from like Crohn's disease, heart disease, having issues, pulmonary issues, respiratory issues. It could be so many things. So it's not just how tall you are, what color eyes you're going to have. It's also what kind of health issues you're going to have. And again, being ready to address that, all right, and recognizing what challenges you may have. And so they have those little forms you fill out. Do you have a family history of? And they got this long list of diseases and all of that. You need to know the answers to that. Because while you may not have seen it this generation, it may pop up the next generation with your child. And you need to be aware of that. But that's just a physical thing in the DNA. Also, mental health. Same thing. Does your family have a history of anxiety, depression? Are they OCD? Or psychopaths, or bipolar, what? What kind of issues do you have? Because those are tendencies. Do you run towards addiction, addictive personality? All right. Those are things you need to know. So there's a lot to think about you before you talk about having a child, and then when you have a child, what is it you hope to accomplish? So when I say you're going to have a child that's going to be productive member of the society, what does that mean to you? All right. And do you feel like this person is independent of you? In other words, your DNA is going to come together to make a child. It's going to be some of the dad, some of the mom, but then together they're going to also create a new entity. And that person is going to have their own personality. And are you going to raise them to be themselves, or you do want to raise a mini-me? Okay, I want someone just like me. And that probably means just as messed up as you are. So it's cute that you're going to have different traits. Like there's nothing like having a son, who looks like me. That's pretty cool. All right, have a daughter, looks like you, it behaves like mom, whatever it is. That's pretty cool. All right, the little family traits, you can see your uncle so-and-so in that, see aunt so-and-so, you're just like your grandmama with that. And it's really cool, and it gives that child a sense of belonging, all right? And so that's something that you can be excited about. But also this child is going to do and say things that you're going to say, where did that come from? And the answer is, it came from the child. That's their sense of self. And it's actually pretty cool. All right, to let them develop into their own people. They're going to be like you, but different. And there'll be some mom, there'll be some dad, grandma, dad, and all of those in there, but they'll also be themselves. And they're going to be raised in a totally different environment than you were. That's what time does. Times change. And they're going to be exposed to some things you never experienced. And so you be teaching them how to live in your day, and it's like those days are gone. It's a new time now. And we really need to learn to be open to hearing what our children are going through, because they're the ones who are experiencing it. And then ask questions of not your children, even though you can, but ask questions of others. It's like, how do you deal with this? How do you learn that? I hate the idea that I do not assist my grandkids in math. I'm very good at math, but I can't help them because I don't do math the way they do math. If they did it my way, their teacher would mark it wrong because the steps are different than what they're supposed to go through at school. I still get the right answer, and I get it quicker too. It makes sense to me, but not to them. They didn't learn it that way. And there's so many things in life where it's so different. They have this thing now where the people have pronouns and stuff. It's like, I know pronoun. Me, he, she, it, we, you, they. I got that. I learned that in school. But I learned it in a very gender specific way. And that's all changing. And fortunately, like I'm, 60 plus years old, and it's like, let the young people deal with that. All right. But those kids, it's like they have it down, and let them do it. But that's something where I've had to learn And so what I do is, rather than, no, that's not, that's not the way we learned it, I shut my mouth. Okay? Because I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to subjects like that. But again, that comes to how much weight do you give to that child's individual experience? How much do you actually care and value what they're going through on a daily basis? Versus, are you trying to invent a better you? When I say a better you, you're trying to live again through this person. And that just does not work, my opinion. So anyway, on parenthood, I just wanted to make it brief. Important role, extremely complicated. Just some things, there's little hints along the way. Stay out the way. Don't let your garbage get in the way of you parenting. Talk about what your expectations are with your mate. Okay, if you're gonna make a baby with somebody, you need to talk about it first. All right, and what the expectations are. Because maybe you guys should be having babies together. All right. And, but again, that's something to consider. It really, really is. Because if you don't, not only will you be paying the price, but the child will be paying the price. And in time, society will be paying the price of that. Parenthood is like one of the most rewarding things I've ever experienced in my life. To this day, I'm still being blessed because of my children. And I highly recommend it, all right? Only because of the experience I've had. It is phenomenal. But having said that, I also know people who are very miserable as parents, and they have made their children's lives miserable. And that's very unfortunate. And so maybe if we have some conversations sooner and along the way, realizing that we don't know everything, maybe we'll do a better job for our kids and to help them to have better lives and to feel better about who they are in life and to give them the social skills they need so that people will be accepting of them, but also so they'll be comfortable going to others for help and people will be happy to help them because they're like cool people to be around. That's positive society. Anyway, that's my little take on parenthood for today. Of course, there's all kinds of perspectives to be considered, but I just wanted to share a little bit today. I hope you found it helpful. And as always, this is Michael, and God bless.